Ever wonder what separates those companies that are just, good from the ones that achieve like this lasting, greatness?
Hmm.
We're doing a deep dive today into Jim Collins's Good to Great
Yeah.
to uncover those secrets of success, hopefully spark some inspiration, maybe for our own endeavors.
Yeah, it's interesting, because Collins, he didn't focus on those companies that were like always the high flyers.
Right.
His team really specifically looked for those companies that had been kind of average, for years, but then all of a sudden made this like dramatic and lasting shift to, greatness. And they weren't just looking at like a good year or two. They were looking for companies that just consistently outperformed, the market. Some by like 3 times or more, and not just for a short time, like for 15 years or longer, which is incredible.
15 years. That's longer than a lot of companies even exist.
Exactly.
It really shows you that this is like a fundamental shift,
Mhm.
not just like a lucky break or something. What I find really interesting is how much this research challenges those like deeply held beliefs about what it really takes to be successful.
Totally. For example, like you would think that there's this direct link between how much you pay your executives and how well your company does.
Right, right.
But one of the first myths that this book debunks is that you need to like shower your executives with these like massive, paychecks to really achieve greatness.
So it's not just about getting the best and brightest with just like wads of cash.
Right.
Then what is it? Is it about finding people that are like driven by something, like
Yeah.
inside of themselves?
Yeah. You hit it right on the head.
Okay.
It's about having those right people on the bus,
Yeah.
the ones that are driven by this like, deep inner desire to like build something truly exceptional,
Okay.
not just chasing a bigger paycheck.
Right.
And it's also about making a work environment where those people, they can like really thrive and do well.
That makes me think about all those companies, that are constantly restructuring, always doing layoffs to try to like quickly fix things. It seems counterintuitive, but did Collins' research find that these good to great companies, like, did they avoid doing that?
It's funny you should mention that because, yeah, it's surprising, but good to great companies, they rarely use layoffs as like their main tactic.
You understand.
Instead of like churning through employees, they really concentrate on getting the right people into the right roles,
Yeah.
making this environment of stability and empowerment. And it really allowed the teams to focus on the long-term, success
Yeah.
rather than just like weathering the storm of this constant like, change and upheaval.
Yeah, it's not about those like quick short-term gains. It's about like fostering that sense of shared purpose,
Exactly.
commitment.
Hmm.
And of course, it's impossible to talk about like business today without talking about technology. So, how did technology play into these companies', transformations? Was it that like magic solution that everyone says it is?
Well, technology is, important for sure. But the research actually found that it's more of an accelerator
Right.
rather than the main driver of success.
Okay.
These companies, they didn't chase every new gadget or trend.
Right.
Instead, they were very strategic. They focused on how technology could actually make their existing strengths even stronger.
So it's about using technology in a way that helps you do what you're already good at.
Exactly. Aligning it with what they were already great at,
Okay.
instead of letting it dictate their direction.
It's really interesting how all these findings, they kind of force us to really rethink those assumptions we have about what actually leads to success.
Hmm.
It's not about those Band-Aid solutions or flashy leadership or just chasing the next big thing. It's more about building like a really solid foundation with the right people, a clear vision, and then using things like technology to help get you where you want to go.
Yeah. It's about, playing that long game. And speaking of having those, right people on the bus, that kind of naturally leads us to leadership, right?
Yeah.
What kind of leaders did they find? Like, what kind of leaders were steering this ship for these good to great companies?
Right, because I feel like we always think of a successful leader as like somebody who's super charismatic or like this larger than life personality.
Mm.
So did Collins find that to be true?
Not really. It's funny because one of the things that they found that's so compelling is this idea of level 5 leadership.
Okay.
And these level 5 leaders weren't necessarily like the really charismatic, attention-grabbing types that we always see like praised and celebrated and stuff.
Interesting. So what is a level 5 leader then? What makes them different?
Well, they had this really interesting kind of paradoxical blend of like personal humility, but with this like unwavering resolve.
Okay.
They were ambitious, for sure, but their ambition was always pointed towards the success of the company as a whole.
Okay.
It wasn't about their own ego. Like
Yeah.
they were driven by this like deep inner need to build something, lasting, something great, something that would be there even after, they were gone.
That makes me think about somebody like Darwin Smith
Mhm.
over at Kimberly-Clark, because he wasn't known for being, this like visionary leader or like a super charismatic speaker or anything.
Right.
But he made this like really gutsy decision to like dismantle their whole core business, coated paper, and just go all in on this consumer paper market, which is like a huge risk.
Huge. It's a huge risk.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, very few leaders would even, like, think to take a risk like that.
Right.
And what's amazing is that, Smith, he wasn't doing it for, like, the glory.
Right.
People describe him as actually being really quiet,
Hmm.
unassuming even.
Hmm.
But he had this, like, incredible resolve, this, like, unwavering belief that this was, like, the right move for the company, even if it meant, like, going against what everyone thought and, like, taking apart the thing that had been making them money for so long,
And it really paid off, though. I mean, look at them now. Kimberly-Clark ended up doing better than, like, the giant in the industry, Scott Paper.
Exactly. They really, like,
It shows how much we, like, misjudge what makes a good leader sometimes. Yeah.
it's not always the loudest person in the room that's going to bring you that real lasting success.
It's so true.
It makes you think, have you ever, like, worked with a leader like that?
Mm-hmm.
Someone who, like, maybe they weren't looking for the spotlight, but they just had this, like, quiet determination about them.
Right.
And that, like, commitment to this larger goal,
It really makes you think. It's definitely something to, like, reflect on.
Yeah.
And it actually leads perfectly into another really cool concept from the book, which is the Stockdale paradox.
The Stockdale paradox.
Okay.
I like the sound of that. Tell me more.
So it's named after this guy, Admiral Jim Stockdale.
Okay.
And he was a prisoner of war in Vietnam. And, I mean, he went through just, like, unimaginable stuff during those 7 years he was captured.
Yeah. But despite, like, how truly awful his situation was, Stockdale, he never gave up hope.
Wow.
He never stopped believing that he would survive this and eventually go home. But this is the paradox part.
Yeah.
He didn't just, like, bury his head in the sand and pretend everything was fine. He knew it was bad, like, really bad. And he faced that head on. He acknowledged the very real possibility that, he might not make it out of there.
So it was about keeping that, like, balance between hope and, like, seeing clearly, what the situation was, no matter how bad.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
got it. And the thing is, this paradox, it's not just about, surviving a POW camp. It's actually super relevant to, the business world. Think about companies that are going through tough times. The ones that make it, Collins found, it's because they're able to hold on to this, like, unwavering faith in their ability to get through it,
Right. Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they're also, like, looking right at the hard, brutal facts of what's happening right now, no matter how difficult those facts are to, like, accept,
It's about admitting there's a problem. You don't just ignore it, right?
Right.
You don't let it, like, make you lose hope that there's a solution out there.
Exactly.
It makes me think about when they deregulated the banking industry back in the 80s,
Mhm.
Wells Fargo and Bank of America, they were both under all this pressure to cut costs.
Right.
But they went about it in totally different ways.
Totally. And you know what?
Uh-huh.
Those different approaches are actually a really good example of the Stockdale paradox in action. Yeah. Wells Fargo, under this guy, Carl Reichert, their CEO, you know what they did?
What?
They actually embraced this, like, surprisingly frugal mindset.
Okay.
They even called it the rinse your own cottage cheese mentality.
Onto your own cottage cheese.
Yeah. They cut back on, like, everything, even, like, small things. Like, they really wanted to send this message that everybody, even the bigwigs at the top, were all in this together,
I love that. Rinse your own cottage cheese. It's not just about, cutting costs. It's about changing the entire, like, mindset.
You got it. It was about challenging the whole idea of entitlement,
Okay.
even in the executive suite.
Yeah.
No more, like, fancy private dining rooms, no more corporate jets.
Wow.
They were serious about cutting back, even on stuff that might seem small in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
But it really showed they were committed to sharing in the sacrifices.
I say.
And on the other hand, you got Bank of America. They seemed to, like, really hold on to how things were.
Yeah.
So their whole approach, it kind of shows that, disconnect that the Stockdale paradox warns us about, right?
Yeah.
That gap between like being optimistic and facing reality. It's a great example because think about it. Wells Fargo's over there tightening their belts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Bank of America's leadership, they're still in their like lavish offices.
Oh, wow.
They're still using their private elevator. So it's got all their perks.
Oh, my gosh.
I know. And those different approaches, they really show in the results.
Mm.
Wells Fargo, they thrived. Their stock went through the roof.
Yeah.
And Bank of America, they really struggled to adapt to these new rules.
Wow. It's a good reminder that looking reality straight in the eye, even when it's hard, that's how you grow, that's how you become resilient. So we talked about having the right people, the right kind of leadership to get through those tough times. What else did Collins find? Like, what else helps a good company become a truly great one? It seems like so many companies, they try to do it all,
Right.
spread themselves thin, chase every opportunity. But Collins found something different with these good to great companies.
Yeah.
They focused on something he calls the hedgehog concept,
Okay.
which it sounds kind of simple, but I'm guessing it's a bit more nuanced than that.
Yeah, you're right. It's not quite as straightforward as it sounds at first. The hedgehog concept, it's not about being like pretty good at a lot of things.
Right.
It's about really understanding, like deep down, what you could be the absolute best in the world at. And just as important, it's got to be something that like really lights your fire, something you're passionate about. And of course, it has to work with your economic engine, how you actually make money.
So it's about finding that place where what you're good at and what you love and what actually makes money all line up. It's not just chasing profits. It's about finding a purpose that truly motivates you, that drives you forward.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that's so cool about this book. These ideas, they apply to us too, not just companies.
Right.
They challenge us to find our own hedgehog concept. Like, what are you really passionate about? What are you naturally good at? And then how do you take those talents and passions and make them work with your own personal goals, your own dreams?
It reminds us that success, it isn't just about, tripping over the right opportunity. It's about really understanding yourself.
Yes.
What you want to accomplish. So we've got the right people, a leadership style that's all about humility and determination, that ability to face the hard stuff without giving up hope, and this whole idea of the hedgehog concept. What's the last piece?
All right. So imagine this, okay?
Yeah.
A giant, heavy flywheel, like one of those huge metal discs.
Okay, yeah.
It takes a ton of effort to get it moving, right? But each push, every time you get it to turn, it builds on the last one. And eventually the momentum takes over. And that thing that wouldn't budge before, it's an unstoppable force.
Yeah.
And that's the flywheel effect.
So you're saying it's not about just one big idea or some magic solution that fixes everything overnight. It's about consistent effort over time.
Yes, exactly. It's about taking those small steps, those incremental steps, making a little bit of progress each time. And eventually you hit that tipping point where the momentum just carries you forward.
I see. And that's what Collins found with these good to great companies.
Exactly. There was no haha moment for them.
Right.
No silver bullet. It was just a series of smart choices, sticking to their hedgehog concept and focusing on their plan every day, every year.
And then what's amazing is once that flywheel gets going, it seems to just keep itself going,
Success builds on itself.
Exactly. It's like this positive loop.
Yeah.
The company gets a good reputation, they get the best people, loyal customers, new opportunities, and it just feeds itself.
And that creates something that lasts.
It really does. It becomes part of their DNA. It goes way beyond just the people who got it started.
Wow. And that's really what defines greatness, isn't it?
Yeah.
Building something that doesn't just do well today, but continues to thrive for years and years to come. As we wrap up our look at good to great, I think the biggest takeaway is that greatness isn't about luck.
It's a choice. You build a company with the right people, a culture of discipline, you really hone in on what you can be the best at, and you have the guts to face reality head on while never losing that faith that you'll get through the tough stuff and achieve something truly amazing. So I guess the question is, what will you do to get your own flywheel turning?